I'm joined today by a very special guest, Alex Newman. Alex, you are a journalist, you are an international traveler, you are a speaker, you are an author. You have just concluded a remarkably successful tour all summer long, dozens and dozens and dozens of dates, speaking across the country on education and beseeching and imploring that moms and dads pull their kids out of the failed public schools. You just have a wealth of education about why they should do that. So I want to welcome you aboard. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Duke. It's wonderful to be with you.
And we're going to talk a little bit in the first segment. We're going to do 2 10-minute segments with you. In the first one, we're going to talk a little bit about the deep state. And the deep state is something you've also written about very, very effusively. And we're going to talk about the deep state in the context of the firing of John Bolton. First, for anybody who might not be aware, give me the 30-second down and dirty version of what the deep state is.
Well, at the superficial level, when Fox News talks about the deep state, they're talking about rogue bureaucrats in the Department of Justice and in the FBI and within the, intelligence community, so-called. But I think the real deep state, the one that people really need to be focused on, and it's true, there's rogue employees there who are against Trump, who are against the American people, who hate our Constitution, and they're doing whatever they want, and they can't be fired. That's absolutely true, and it's something to be concerned about. But much more concerning than that are the powers behind the scenes that really manipulate policy, manipulate the American people. And they have all this huge network of secretive, semi-secret, and sometimes secret organizations and societies that are involved in these manipulations. And so one of the things we did at the New American Magazine, we did a whole special report. Our very first issue of 2018 was Deep State Pulling the Strings Behind the Scenes. And so we break down what are these different organizations, who's involved with them, how do they work, and so on. And it turns out John Bolton's involved in a lot of them. So the Council on Foreign Relations, the global government promoting so-called think tank that Hillary Clinton said gives her orders, tells her what she should be doing and how she should think about the world. Doesn't matter, Republicans, Democrats, they're all involved at the upper levels of the parties and the administrations. You have the Bilderberg Group, this secretive annual summit where, Henry Kissinger and the Rockefellers bring together their dupes and useful idiots and the other self-styled elites to decide world policy. You have secret societies like the Skull and Bones Society at Yale that Bush and Kerry were both members of. You have the Bohemian Grove up in Northern California. Literally every Republican president since the 1920s, with the exception of Donald Trump, has attended this weirdo meeting. You have the Trilateral Commission, David Rockefeller and Zbigniew Brzezinski founded this. So when we talk about the deep state, we're talking about a secretive cabal of individuals in both parties who are actively involved in trying to surrender the sovereignty of the United States, undermine the liberties of the American people, and build what they themselves very frequently refer to as a new world order. And that's the background that John Bolton comes out of.
Right, and this is deeper than the swamp, right? When Donald Trump usually talks about the swamp, he's talking about those career bureaucrats that are anti-Trump, anti-Republican, and you're absolutely right, they're there. This is deeper than that. This is a coordinated effort by very secretive aspects of the American government who have an incredible amount of pull and influence. They're very good at destroying people and destroying careers. And John Bolton does have, as you say, he comes out of much of that background between Bilderberg, between the Council of Foreign Relations. It's funny to me that the same progressives, the same people who were griping about Donald Trump hiring John Bolton, same progressives, the same rhino Republicans who said things like, if you bring Bolton on board, we're going to be in war. He's a warmonger. Now are the same people are lamenting. They're using the firing of John Bolton to prove that Trump is somehow incompetent.
Yeah, it really is amazing. And the only thing I can figure is that when Bolton was first hired, the establishment needed to put out some fake opposition. Everybody knows the fake media hates Trump and hates everything sensible that he does. And so if they said, hooray, look what a great choice Trump made by hiring a Council on Foreign Relations member and Bilderberg attendee to run his national security policy, people would have been suspicious. Trump supporters would have said, wait a minute here. Why in the world is the fake media praising this decision? Something's not right here. And so there was a little bit of pushback. But you're right. Now that he's been fired, we see all the fake media freaking out. We see the establishment rampaging about how Trump is a lunatic. The reality is Trump did the right thing. John Bolton wanted to get us into ever more wars. The guy's a chicken hawk. He loves to send off our children to go die in foreign wars based on lies. Of course, he'll never go himself. Right? I say send John Bolton, give him a rifle, and send him to Venezuela. Send him to Iran, knock himself out, right? But Trump did the right thing getting rid of this guy, and now we're seeing the establishment freaking out because their agent, their insider, their warmonger has been removed. And again, that's a very good thing. We'll have to see who he is replaced by.
Yeah, in terms of a security advisor. It does seem to be interesting, too, while we're on this topic. One of the things that seems to drive the deep state nuts, the swamp, the deep state nuts, is the fact that Donald Trump is taking a hard line with China. And when it comes, but a hard line that puts everything on the table except military intervention, which was Bolton would have wanted, perhaps. What we're calling for here is this idea that finally we've got a president who is demanding accountability from the Chinese. Look, you're shipping us all your merchandise and we're paying exorbitant prices from it, but you've got to start protecting property rights, intellectual property rights. You've got to stop gouging the American consumer and working with us. Why does that drive the deep state so crazy that Trump is actually standing up to this global juggernaut economy, China?
Well, communist China needs to be understood as a key player in the emerging New World Order. And in fact, we've written about this very extensively at the New American Magazine. We actually did a cover story. And what we did was we showed that all the way from the very beginning, right, Mao was literally put into power through the deliberate actions of subversive elements of our government, members of the Council on Foreign Relations, people like George Marshall, Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, people who deliberately betrayed our ally, Chiang Kai-shek, and put Chairman Mao into power. And from that time to this day, elements of the globalist establishment in the United States, that we call the deep state, have been intimately involved in building up China and destroying and undermining the United States. This is well documented. In fact, it's incredibly well documented, and we don't even have to speculate. We don't even have to think about what's going on behind the scenes. David Rockefeller went over to China in the early 1970s, and he came back and he wrote an op-ed in the New York Times, mind you. It's still on their website today, where he said the social experiment under Chairman Mao is the most important and successful in human history. No mention of the fact that 80 million people were slaughtered in this so-called social experiment. So clearly the Rockefellers, who were at the heart of the deep state, very much approve of what was happening in China. More recently, you had George Soros say China should own the New World Order. And so the building up of China, we saw this under the Obama administration with the Paris Agreement. Basically, we're going to shut down all our factories, we're going to shut down our economy, transfer all our productive capacity to China, and pretend like it's going to save us from global warming. It's absolutely asinine. It's absolutely ludicrous, but it's a crucial component. You can't have a new world order that these people envision when you have a power like the United States based on the idea of God-given rights and individual liberty, and that the government exists to protect those rights. They need a communist Chinese-style system to be kind of running the show, at least on the surface of things, because that's their vision. Undermine individual liberty, promote totalitarianism. And so China is at the heart of this vision. And then to have Trump come along and interrupt this whole process and call it out, this is extremely serious. Communist China is an existential threat to the United States and to our liberty. And Trump has really raised the alarm about this in a way that I don't think the globalists and the deep state foresaw happening.
Alex, we got about a minute and a half left in this segment. Quickly, though, I'd like you to talk a little bit about one area of this pro-China approach to the globalist deep staters that has real-world consequences for Americans. That is the social credit score, the way the Chinese allow you to participate or not participate in media, in all sorts of things based on their assessment of your reliability to the cause. Talk a little bit how that's already part of in the minute we have left, talk a little bit about that's already coming to our big tech companies.
Yeah, we were one of the first to write about that at the New American Magazine. We did an article called China's Social Credit Score is one of the most Orwellian schemes ever. And that is happening now in America. There's been open discussion about it, that they're going to use the data gathered by these social media companies, which you really can't separate the deep state from the big tech companies. I mean, they came out of the military-industrial complex in Silicon Valley. And what they're doing now, they are gathering unfathomable amounts of data on the American people. They have increasingly sophisticated computer systems that can sort through this data. And now they're talking about using that to decide whether you can buy a gun or not. So we are moving in the same direction as communist China. There's this facade that, these are private companies, they can do whatever they want. Well, we know very well that that's not the whole story. And people need to be very, very careful. When you can, shut down your social media accounts, feed false information to your social media providers, try to interrupt this in any way possible, because the future is going to be absolutely nightmarish if these people get away with it.
You are absolutely right. And the fact that this is so comfortably a part of the American Silicon Valley big tech program should make you very, very nervous. In some ways, our tech gurus are more communist than they are free market, already dangerous. Alex, thanks for the first part of this interview.
Thank you so much, Duke.